couple of things here. 10 benefits of this, what I understand to be the glad diet, God's life-activating diet, and not the sad diet, the standard American diet. You know, it's anti-constipation, anti-cancer, loaded with antioxidants, provides complete protein, provides good fats. A couple more here. Provides good carbohydrates, provides proper amount of dietary fiber, provides good cholesterol, promotes greater physical endurance. And as we said before, it promotes good pH. That's dealing with the scale from alkaline, from acid to alkaline. So we see there is a physical diet that is prescribed, but there's also a spiritual diet, right? Because again, we're talking about what goes into the mouth and the mind that affects our beings. So there is also a spiritual diet. And I want to read the statement here from Ministry of Healing. Because remember again, when you look at the Garden of Eden, the first Exodus, and when you come down to our time, there are two most important things that we have to pay attention to. And that is the physical and the spiritual. Notice what it says here. A true knowledge of God is the chapter here in chapter 35. Like our Savior, we are in this world to do service for God. We are to become like God in what? In character. We must know Him aright. We must know Him as He reveals Himself. A knowledge of God is the foundation of all true education. That is so important for us to remember. A knowledge of God is the foundation of all true education and of all true service. It is the only real safeguard against temptation. It is this alone that can make us like God in character. It continues. This is the knowledge needed by all who are working for the uplifting of their fellow man. Transformation of character, purity of life, efficiency in service, adherence to correct principles, all depend upon a right knowledge of who? A right knowledge of God. And I think God well understood that when He gave the sanctuary to those who were in that first Exodus experience. Because He wanted them to have a true knowledge of who He is. What was the reason for the sanctuary again? Let them make me a sanctuary so I may do what? I may dwell among them. And you look at the sanctuary, all that the sanctuary reveals, obviously, is about God or the plan of salvation. I would touch a little bit on that as we go along. So this knowledge is the essential preparation both for this life and the life to do what? The life to come. Here's another statement. Here's a very, very important statement. Very interesting statement. It says, there are two lesson books. Nature and Revelation. What do they do? Nature and Revelation alike do what? Testify of who? The knowledge of God. So on the one hand, we have God giving us the diet that is most fitted for us physically, but also impacts us mentally, spiritually. And then on the other hand, He also gives us another diet that is the spiritual, a revelation of Himself. Notice this statement here, Romans chapter 1 and verse 20. It says, the invisible things of Him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things which are what? The things which are made. Even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So we see, just as that statement says, we can get a true knowledge of God. We can receive information about our Lord through the universe, nature. Psalms 19, verse 1 to 3, it says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows forth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night shows forth what? Knowledge. Knowledge about who? Knowledge about God. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. What can we learn about God through the things that we see around us? I'm sure, if not all of you, you have seen the video on cells and this particular aspect of the cell called the flagella. Have you seen a video like that before? This is a little part of the cell that when they look at the construction of it, it looks like something you and I would put together today. It looks like the mechanism of a helicopter propeller. It baffles the minds of scientists, atheists, evolutionists. Who is this flagella reflecting? What is it reflecting? It is reflecting that there is intelligent design in its makeup. Someone said if you look at a watch, you would assume that it's made by who? Or if you look at a car, you would assume that it's made by a, well, yes, a designer. Someone who designs cars. So when you look at the universe, you look at the human body, you look at a thing like the flagella, with all of its construction, it reflects that there is an intelligent designer. And we believe that that intelligent designer is God. We can get a knowledge of God through created things. How about the sun? 92 million miles away from planet Earth. And we are told if it moves just a tiny bit closer to us, we'll all become toast. And if it moves just a little bit away from us, we become popsicles. This reveals to us that our God is a God of law and order. We can get a knowledge of who God is through the universe. How about the human cells in the body? In order for glucose to get into the human cells, there's something that must attend it. What is that? Do you know? I think you know. Insulin. Glucose cannot get into the human cells without insulin. Isn't that interesting? Who designed the body to function in this way? I believe it's the same person that shows up in the Genesis account of creation. God the Creator. The one that creates you and the one that creates me. How about plants, flowers? All these things reveal the master artistry of God. But you know, friends, this is very important. While we admire God's handiwork, we are not to worship his handiwork as God. How should we respond to such revelations? We're talking about now the spiritual diet. Don't forget. It should lead us to worship him who is nature's God and not nature. This text here from Nehemiah chapter 9, verse 6 to 7. Look at what it says. Thou, even thou art Lord alone. Thou hast made heaven and the heaven of heavens with all their hosts, the earth and all things that are therein, the seas and all that is therein, and thou preservest them all, and the host of heaven does what? Worship thee. Isn't that interesting? But yet man is worshiping nature. Thou art Lord, the God, thou art the Lord, the God who didst choose Abraham, and broughtest him forth out of Ur, of the Chaldees, and gave him the name Abraham. So this verse even identifies the God who created all these things. The God that turns up in the Genesis account, the God who led Abraham, one of our forefathers. Two statements from the spirit of prophecy. Nature is not God, brothers and sisters. We receive from nature knowledge of God. Nature helps us to understand more about God so that we can feed our spirituality. We can understand Him, draw closer to Him. But nature is not God and is not to be worshipped as God. God's handiwork in nature is not God Himself in nature. The things of nature are an expression of God's character and power, but we are not to regard nature as God. The artistic skill of human beings produces very beautiful workmanship, things that delight the eyes, and these things reveal to us something of the thought of the designer. Isn't that the truth? Yes. You don't look at a watch, a car, a computer, and look at it and say, oh, how wonderful, you brought yourself into existence. Look at your symmetry. Look at your beauty. No. Even if we admire the thing, we said, man, I tell you, these people who put these things together are brilliant. Right? We don't say, oh, this thing is brilliant to bring itself into existence. No, we don't do that. So why would we do that with God? So it reveals to us something of the thought of the designer, but the thing made is not the maker. It is not the work, but the workman that is counted worthy of honor. So while nature is an expression of God's thought, it is not nature, but the God of nature that is to be exalted. So that's one of the lesson book that we are given where we can get a true knowledge of God to feed our spirituality.